What is art? By Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 10. Because the upper classes had lost their faith, their art grew poor in content. But that was not all. As it became more and more exclusive, it became at the same time more and more complicated, more affected, and more unclear. When an artist of the whole people composed his work, as the Greek artist did, or the Jewish prophets, he naturally tried to say what he had to say, so that all men could understand him. But when an artist composed for a small circle of people living in exceptional conditions, or even for one man in his court, for a pope, a cardinal, a king, a duke, a queen, a king's mistress, then he naturally cared about one thing only, to have an effect on these people, whom he knew, whose conditions of life he knew. And this easier way of calling up feeling drew him, without his noticing it, towards hints that were dark to everyone and clear only to the initiated. In the first place, more could be said that way, and in the second place, such a manner of expression carried for the initiated a certain special charm of mistiness. This manner of expression showed itself in euphemism, in allusions to mythology and to history, and it came into use more and more. In our own day it has reached what looks like its furthest limit in the art called decadence, and now it is not only haziness, riddling obscurity, and inaccessibility to the masses that are counted as merits and as conditions of the poetic. Inexactness, vagueness, and want of eloquence are counted so too. Théophile Gautier, in his preface to the celebrated Flowers of Evil, says that Baudelaire drove out of poetry, as far as he could, eloquence, passion, and truth copied too exactly, and Baudelaire did not only say this, he proved it in his verse, and still more in the prose of his little poems in prose, whose meaning has to be guessed at like a rebus, and mostly remains unguessed. The poet who comes after Baudelaire, and is also reckoned great, Verlaine, wrote a whole art of poetry, in which he gives this advice: music before everything else, and for that choose the uneven line, vaguer and more soluble in air, with nothing in it that weighs or settles, and take care never to pick your words without some mistake in them. Nothing is dearer than the gray song, where the undecided is joined to the precise. And further on, music again and always, let your verse be the thing that has taken wing, that one feels escaping from a soul on its way to other skies and other loves. Let your verse be the good fortune scattered on the sharp wind of morning, going off smelling of mint and thyme, and all the rest is literature. The next after these two, held to be the most important of the young poets, is Mallarmé, and he says outright that the charm of a poem lies in guessing its meaning, and that there must always be a riddle in poetry. I think there must be nothing but illusion, the contemplation of objects, the image taking flight from the reveries they stir up. That is the song. The Parnassians take the thing whole and show it, and so they lack mystery. They rob the mind of that delicious joy of believing that it creates. To name an object is to suppress 3/4 of the poet's enjoyment, which is made of the happiness of guessing little by little. To suggest it, that is the dream. It is the perfect use of this mystery that makes the symbol. To call up an object little by little in order to show a state of soul, or the other way round, to choose an object and draw a state of soul out of it by a series of decipherings. If a being of average intelligence and insufficient literary preparation opens such a book by chance and claims to enjoy it, there is a misunderstanding, and things must be put back in their places. There must always be a riddle in poetry, and that is the aim of literature. There is no other aim, to call up objects. So that among the new poets, obscurity has been raised into a dogma, as the French critic Dumic quite correctly says, though he does not yet accept the truth of that dogma. It would be time, he writes, to have done with that famous theory of obscurity, which the new school has in fact raised to the height of a dogma. And it is not only French writers who think so. Poets of every other nationality think and act the same way. Germans, Scandinavians, Italians, Russians, English. So think all the artists of the new time, in every kind of art, in painting and sculpture and music. Leaning on Nietzsche and Wagner, the artists of our day hold that they need not be understood by the coarse masses. It is enough for them to call up poetic states in the best nurtured men, as an English aesthetician puts it. So that what I say may not look like mere assertion, I will give at least a few samples of the French poets who have gone at the head of this movement. Their name is legion. I have chosen the new French writers because they express the new direction of art more sharply than the others, and because most Europeans imitate them. Besides those whose names are already famous, such as Baudelaire and Verlaine, here are some of them: Jean Moreus, Charles Maurras, Henry de Regnier, Charles Vignier, Adrien Remical, René Gill, Maurice Maeterlinck, Albert Aurier, Remy de Gourmont, Saint Paul Roux the Magnificent, Georges Rodenbach, Count Robert de Montesquieu Fezensac. These are the symbolists and the decadents. Then come the Magi, Josephine Paladin, Paul Adam, Jules Bois, Papus, and others. Besides these, there are another 141 writers whom Dumic lists in his book. Here are samples from those of these poets who are held to be the best. I begin with the most celebrated of all, acknowledged a great man and worthy of a monument, Baudelaire. For instance, is a poem from his famous Flowers of Evil. I adore you as I adore the vault of night, O vessel of sadness, O great silent one, and I love you the more, my beauty, the more you flee from me, and the more you seem to me, ornament of my nights, to pile up in mockery the leagues that separate my arms from the blue immensities. I move up to the attack, I climb to the assault, like a choir of worms after a corpse, and I cherish, O implacable and cruel beast, even that coldness by which you are more beautiful to me. Here is another by the same Baudelaire. Two warriors have rushed at each other. Their weapons have spattered the air with flashes and with blood. These games, this clashing of steel, are the uproar of a youth given over to whimpering love. The blades are broken, like our youth, my dear. But the teeth, the sharpened nails soon avenge the sword and the treacherous dagger. Oh, the fury of ripe hearts that love has ulcerated. In the ravine haunted by wild cats and by panthers, our heroes have rolled, clutching each other cruelly, and their skin will make the barren brambles flower. That gulf is hell, peopled with our friends. Let us roll into it without remorse, inhuman Amazon, so as to make the heat of our hatred everlasting. To be exact, I must say that there are poems in the collection that are less unintelligible, but there is not one that is simple, not one that can be understood without some effort, and the effort is seldom repaid because the feelings the poet carries are bad feelings and very low ones. These feelings are always expressed with a deliberate oddity and absurdity. The premeditated obscurity is especially plain in his prose, where the author could have spoken simply if he had wished to. Here is an example from his little poems in prose. The first piece, The Stranger. Whom do you love best, enigmatic man? Your father, your mother, your brother, your sister. I have neither father, nor mother, nor sister, nor brother. Your friends? You are using a word whose meaning has stayed unknown to me to this day. Your country? I do not know under what latitude it lies. Beauty? I would love her gladly, goddess and immortal. Gold? I hate it as you hate God. Well then, what do you love, extraordinary stranger? I love the clouds that pass over there, the marvelous clouds. The piece called The Soup in the Clouds is probably meant to show that the poet is not understood even by the woman he loves. Here it is. My darling little madwoman was giving me my dinner, and through the open window of the dining room, I was contemplating the moving architectures that God builds out of vapors, the marvelous constructions of the impalpable. And I said to myself, in the middle of my contemplation, all these phantasmagorias are almost as beautiful as the eyes of my beautiful beloved, the monstrous little madwoman with the green eyes. And all at once I got a violent punch in the back, and I heard a voice, hoarse and charming, hysterical and as if made husky by brandy, the voice of my dear little beloved, who said, "Are you going to eat your soup soon, you cursed merchant of clouds?" Artificial as this piece is, one can with some effort make out what the author wanted to say by it. But there are pieces that are completely unintelligible, to me at least. Here, for instance, is The Gallant Marksman, whose sense I could not make out at all. The gallant marksman, as the carriage was crossing the wood, he had it stopped near a shooting gallery, saying that it would give him pleasure to fire a few shots and kill time. To kill that monster, is it not everyone's most ordinary and most legitimate occupation? And he gallantly offered his arm to his dear, delicious, and execrable wife, that mysterious woman to whom he owes so many pleasures, so many pains, and perhaps a great part of his genius as well. Several bullets struck far from the target. One of them even buried itself in the ceiling. And as the charming creature was laughing wildly, making fun of her husband's clumsiness, he turned to her sharply and said, "Look at that doll over there on the right, with its nose in the air and its haughty face. Well, dear angel, I imagine that it is you." And he shut his eyes and pulled the trigger. The doll was cleanly beheaded. Then bowing to his dear, his delicious, his execrable wife, his inevitable and pitiless muse, and kissing her hand respectfully, he added, "Ah, my dear angel, how I thank you for my marksmanship." The works of another celebrity, Verlaine, are no less affected and no less unintelligible. Here, for instance, is the first from the section called Forgotten Little Airs. It carries a line from Favart as its motto: "The wind on the plain holds its breath." It is the languorous ecstasy, it is the wariness of love, it is all the shivering of the woods, in the embrace of the breezes, it is towards the gray branches, the choir of little voices. Oh, the frail and fresh murmur! It babbles and whispers, it is like the soft cry breathed out by the shaking grass. You would say, under the turning water, the muffled rolling of pebbles. This soul that laments in this sleeping complaint, it is ours, is it not? Mine, say it, and yours, breathing out its humble chant, very low, on this mild evening. What is this choir of little voices? What is this soft cry breathed out by the shaken grass? And what the whole thing means remains completely dark to me. And here is another little air. In the endless boredom of the plain, the uncertain snow shines like sand. The sky is of copper, without a gleam of any kind. You would think you saw the moon living and dying. Like clouds, the oaks of the nearby woods float gray among the mists. That sky is of copper, without a gleam of any kind. You would think you saw the moon living and dying. Wheezing crow, and you lean wolves in these bitter winds, what is happening to you? In the endless boredom of the plain, the uncertain snow shines like sand. How does the moon live and die in a copper sky, and how does snow shine like sand? All this is not merely unintelligible. Under the pretense of carrying a mood, it is a heap of false comparisons and false words. Besides these artificial and unclear poems, there are others that are intelligible, but which are simply bad, in form and in content alike. Such are all the poems under the title Wisdom. The largest place in them is taken by very bad expressions of the most vulgar Catholic and patriotic feelings. There are stanzas like this one: "I want to think of nothing now but my Mother Mary, seat of wisdom and source of pardons, Mother of France too, from whom we look unshakably for the honor of the fatherland." Before I give examples from the other poets, I cannot pass over the astonishing fame of these two versifiers, Baudelaire and Verlaine, who are now acknowledged as great poets. How could the French, who had Chenier, Musset, Lamartine, and above all Hugo, who had so recently the so-called Parnassians, Leconte de Lisle, Sully Prudhomme, and the rest, attach such importance to these two versifiers, and count them great, when they are so unskillful in form, and so low and vulgar in content? The whole view of life of the one, Baudelaire, consists in raising coarse egoism into a theory, and in replacing morality with a notion of beauty as vague as a cloud, a beauty that must always be artificial. Baudelaire preferred a painted woman's face to a natural one, and metal trees and a mineral semblance of water to real ones. The whole view of life of the other, Verlaine, consists of a flabby debauchery, a confession of his own moral impotence, and, as a rescue from that impotence, the crudest Catholic idolatry. Both of them, moreover, are not merely without naturalness, sincerity, and simplicity. Both are stuffed full of artificiality, forced originality, and self-conceit, so that in their least bad works you see more of Monsieur Baudelaire or Monsieur Verlaine than of the thing they are describing. And these two poor versifiers make up a school and lead hundreds of followers after them. There is only one explanation of this. The art of the society in which these versifiers work is not a serious, important business of life. It is only an amusement, and every amusement grows stale with repetition. To make a stale amusement possible again, it has to be freshened up somehow. Boston grows dull, so whist is invented. Whist grows dull, so preference is thought up. Preference grows dull, so something else new is thought up, and so on. The substance stays the same, only the forms change. It's the same with this art. Its content grew narrower and narrower, until at last it seemed to the artists of these exclusive classes that everything had been said and that nothing new could be said. And so, to freshen this art up, they look for new forms. Baudelaire and Verlaine think up a new form, and they touch it up further with pornographic details that had not been used before, and the critics and the public of the upper classes declare them great writers. That, and nothing else, explains the success not only of Baudelaire and Verlaine, but of the whole of decadence. There are, for instance, poems by Mallarmé and by Maeterlinck that have no sense at all, and in spite of that, or perhaps because of it, they are printed not only in tens of thousands of separate editions, but in the collections of the best work of the young poets. Here, for instance, is a sonnet by Mallarmé. To the crushing cloud hushed, low with basalt and with lavas, level with the enslaved echoes, by a trumpet without power. What sepulchral shipwreck! You know it, foam, but you slaver over it, supreme among the wreckage, abolish the stripped mast, or else that which, raging for want of some high perdition, all the vain abyss spread wide, in the trailing hair so white, will have drowned, miserly, the child flake of a siren. That poem is no exception in its unintelligibility. I have read several poems by Mallarmé. They are all just as empty of any sense. And here is a sample of another famous poet of our day. 3 songs by Maeterlinck. I take these 2 from the journal Pan, from the second number of 1895. When he went out, I heard the door. When he went out, she had smiled. But when he came back in, I heard the lamp. But when he came back in, another woman was there. And I saw death, I heard his soul, and I saw death, that waits for him still. They came and said, my child, I am afraid. They came and said that he was going away. My lamp lit, my child, I am afraid. My lamp lit, I went towards it. At the first door, my child, I am afraid. At the first door, the flame trembled. At the second door, my child, I am afraid. At the second door, the flame spoke. At the third door, my child, I am afraid. At the third door, the light died. And if he comes back one day, what must I tell him? Tell him that we waited for him until we were dying of it. And if he asks again, without knowing who I am, speak to him as a sister would. Perhaps he is suffering. And if he asks where you are, what must we answer? Give him my ring of gold, and answer him nothing. And if he wants to know why, the room is empty. Show him the lamp gone out, and the door standing open. And if he questions me then about the last hour, tell him that I smiled, for fear that he should weep. Who went out? Who came in? Who is speaking? Who died? The same holds for the better known and more admired of the young poets, Griffin, Regnier, Mauriac, Montesquieu. Read them and you will get a clear idea of the real state of art today, and you will not think, as many do, that decadence is an accidental passing thing. To escape the reproach of having picked out the worst poems, I copied from each book whatever poem happened to fall on page 28. All the poems of these poets are equally unintelligible, or intelligible only with great effort, and even then not fully. The same is true of the works of those hundreds of poets, of whom I have named only a few. The same kind of verse is printed by the Germans, the Scandinavians, the Italians, and by us Russians, and such works are set and printed, if not in millions, then in hundreds of thousands of copies. Some sell in tens of thousands. Millions upon millions of working days have gone into the setting, the printing, the compiling, and the binding of these books. Not fewer, I think, than went into the building of the Great Pyramid. And that is not all. The same is happening in every other art, and millions of working days are spent on works just as unintelligible, in painting, in music, in drama. Painting does not lag behind poetry here, it runs ahead of it. Here's an extract from the diary of a lover of painting who visited the exhibitions in Paris in 1894. I was at 3 exhibitions today: the Symbolists, the Impressionists, and the Neo-Impressionists. I looked at the pictures honestly and carefully, but again the same bewilderment, and in the end indignation. The first exhibition, Camille Pissarro, was still the most intelligible, though there is no drawing, no content, and the coloring is quite improbable. The drawing is so vague that sometimes you cannot tell which way a hand or a head is turned. The content is mostly effects, an effect of fog, an effect of evening, a setting sun, a few pictures with figures, but with no subject. In the coloring, bright blue and bright green dominate, and every picture has its own basic tone, with which the whole picture seems to have been splashed. In a shepherd girl guarding geese, for instance, the basic tone is verdigris, and little dots of that color turn up everywhere, on the face, the hair, the hands, the dress. In the same gallery, Durand-Ruel, there are other pictures: Puvis de Chavannes, Manet, Monet, Renoir, Sisley, all impressionists. One of them, whose name I could not make out, something like Redon, had painted a blue face in profile. In the whole face there is nothing but this blue tone and white lead. Pissarro has a watercolor done entirely in dots. In the foreground a cow is painted all over in dots of different colors. You cannot catch the general tone, however far back you stand, or however close you come. From there I went to look at the Symbolists. I looked a long time, asking nobody anything, trying to work out for myself what it was about. But it is beyond human comprehension. One of the first things to strike my eye was a wooden relief, hideously executed, showing a woman, naked, squeezing streams of blood out of her two breasts with both hands. The blood runs down and turns into lilac flowers. Her hair falls first, and then rises, and up there it turns into trees. The statue is painted a solid yellow, and the hair brown. Then a picture, a yellow sea, and in it swims something that is either a ship or a heart. On the horizon a profile with a halo and yellow hair which passes into the sea and is lost in it. On some of the pictures the paint is laid on so thickly that it comes out as neither painting nor sculpture. A third thing was still less intelligible, a man's profile, and in front of him a flame and black stripes, which are leeches, as I was told afterwards. At last I asked a gentleman who was standing there what it meant, and he explained to me that the statue is a symbol and represents the earth, that the heart swimming in the yellow sea is illusion, and that the gentleman with the leeches is evil. There were also several impressionist pictures nearby, primitive profiles with some flower or other in the hand, all one tone, not drawn, and either completely vague or else ringed with a broad black outline. That was in 1894. Now the tendency has become still more marked. Buckland, Stuck, Klinger, Sascha Schneider, and the rest. The same is happening in the drama. We are shown an architect who for some reason has not carried out his old high designs, and who because of this climbs onto the roof of a house he has built, and flies off it head first. Or some incomprehensible old woman who exterminates rats, and who for incomprehensible reasons leads a poetic child to the sea, and drowns him there. Or some blind men who sit on the seashore, and for some reason keep repeating the same thing, over and over. Or a bell of some kind that falls into a lake and rings there. The same is happening in music, in the very art that one would think should be more equally intelligible to everyone than any other. A musician, you know, a man of standing, sits down at the piano and plays you what he calls a new work of his own, or of some new composer. You listen to strange, loud sounds, you marvel at the gymnastic exercises of his fingers, and you see plainly that the composer wishes to impress on you that the sounds he is producing are poetic strivings of the soul. You see his intention, but no feeling is carried to you at all, except boredom. The performance goes on a long time, or at least it seems to you a very long time, because you take in nothing clearly, and you cannot help remembering the words of Alphonse Karr. The faster it goes, the longer it lasts, and it occurs to you that this may be a hoax, that the performer may be testing you, throwing his hands and fingers anywhere at all on the keys, hoping that you will fall for it and praise him, and that he will then laugh and admit that he only wanted to try you. But when at last it is over, and the musician gets up from the piano, sweating and excited, plainly expecting praise, you see that it was all in earnest. The same thing happens at every concert with the works of Liszt, Wagner, Berlioz, Brahms, and the newest of them, Richard Strauss, and countless others who go on writing, opera after opera, symphony after symphony, piece after piece. The same thing happens in the field where it would seem hardest to be unintelligible, the field of the novel and the story. You read Huysmans' Down There, or Kipling's stories, or the announcer by Villiers de L'Isle Adam from his Cruel Tales, and it is all not merely abscons, which is a new word of the new writers, but completely unintelligible in form and in content. Such is the novel The Promised Land by E. Morel, now coming out in the Revue Blanche, and such are most of the new novels. The style is very sweeping, the feelings appear elevated, but there is no way of making out what is happening, or where, or to whom. And such is the whole of the young art of our time, people of the first half of our century, admirers of Goethe, Schiller, Musset, Hugo, Dickens, Beethoven, Chopin, Raphael, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Delaroche, understand nothing of this newest art. They often set its works down as tasteless madness and wish to ignore them. But that attitude to the new art has no foundation at all. In the first place, this art is spreading more and more and has already won a firm place in society, the same place that Romanticism won in the 1830s, and in the second place, and this is the main thing if we may condemn the works of the later, so-called decadent art, simply because we do not understand them, then remember that there is an enormous number of people, the whole laboring people and many of the non-laboring people too, who in exactly the same way do not understand the works of art we call beautiful, the poems of our favorite artists, Goethe, Schiller, Hugo, the novels of Dickens, the music of Beethoven and Chopin, the pictures of Raphael, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and the rest. If I have the right to think that the great masses do not understand and do not love what I hold to be undoubtedly good, and that this is because they are not developed enough, then I have no right to deny that I may fail to understand and fail to love the new works of art, simply because I am not developed enough to understand them. And if I have the right to say that I, together with the majority of people who think as I do not understand the works of the new art only because there is nothing there to understand and because it is bad art, then with exactly the same right, a still greater majority, the whole laboring mass, who do not understand what I call fine art, can say that what I call good art is bad art and that there is nothing in it to understand. I saw the injustice of condemning the new art with special clearness once, when a poet who writes unintelligible verse laughed in my presence, with cheerful self-assurance, at unintelligible music. And shortly afterwards a musician who composes unintelligible symphonies laughed with the same self-assurance at unintelligible verse. To condemn the new art because I, a man brought up in the first half of the century, do not understand it, is something I have no right to do and cannot do. I can only say that it is unintelligible to me. The one advantage the art I acknowledge has over decadent art is that this art of mine is intelligible to a somewhat larger number of people than the art of today, from the fact that I have grown used to a certain exclusive art and understand it, while I do not understand a still more exclusive one. I have no right at all to conclude that my art is the true one and that the art I do not understand is false and bad. I can only conclude this, that art becoming more and more exclusive has become more and more unintelligible to more and more people, and that in this movement towards greater and greater unintelligibility, on one of whose steps I stand with the art I am used to, it has reached the point where it is understood by the smallest number of the elect, and where the number of those elect grows smaller and smaller. As soon as the art of the upper classes broke away from the art of the whole people, the conviction appeared that art can be art and yet be unintelligible to the masses. And once that was allowed, it had to be allowed also that art can be intelligible only to the very smallest number of the elect, and finally to two people, or to one, to one's best friend, to oneself. And that is just what the artists of today say outright. I create and I understand myself, and if anyone does not understand me, so much the worse for him. The claim that art can be good art and yet be unintelligible to a great number of people is so untrue. Its consequences are so ruinous for art. And at the same time it is so widespread and so deeply eaten into our way of thinking that one cannot explain its absurdity often enough. Nothing is more common than to hear it said of supposed works of art, that they are very good but very hard to understand. We have grown used to hearing this, and yet to say that a work of art is good but unintelligible is the same as saying of some food that it is very good but that people cannot eat it. People may not like rotten cheese or high game and the other such dishes that gourmets with perverted tastes prize, but bread and fruit are good only when people like them. It is the same with art. Perverted art may be unintelligible to people, but good art is always intelligible to everyone. They say that the very best works of art cannot be understood by the majority and are open only to the elect, who have been prepared to understand these great works. But if the majority does not understand, then it must have the works explained to it. It must be given the knowledge needed to understand them. And it turns out that there is no such knowledge and that the works cannot be explained. So those who say that the majority does not understand good works of art give no explanations. They say instead that in order to understand you must read, look at, and listen to the same works again and again. But this is not explaining. This is habituating. And people can be habituated to anything, even to the very worst things. As people can be habituated to rotten food, to vodka, tobacco, and opium, so people can be habituated to bad art. And that is precisely what is being done. Besides, one cannot say that the majority of people lack the taste to judge the highest works of art. The majority always has understood and still understands what we too call the highest art. The simple and beautiful stories of the Bible, the parables of the gospel, the folk legend, the fairy tale, the folk song, everyone understands them. Why should the majority suddenly have lost the power to understand what is lofty in our art? Of a speech one may say that it is beautiful, but unintelligible to those who do not know the language it was spoken in. A speech delivered in Chinese may be beautiful, and still stay unintelligible to me if I do not know Chinese. But a work of art differs from every other spiritual activity in exactly this, Its language is intelligible to all, and it infects all without distinction. The tears and the laughter of a Chinese infect me just as the laughter and tears of a Russian do. And so do painting and music and a poem, once it is translated into a language I understand. The song of a Kyrgyz or a Japanese moves me, though less than it moves the Kyrgyz or the Japanese himself. Japanese painting moves me too, and Indian architecture, and an Arab tale. If a Japanese song or a Chinese novel moves me little, it is not because I do not understand these works. It is because I know and am used to higher works of art. It is not in any way because that art stands above me. Great works of art are great precisely because they are open and intelligible to all. The story of Joseph, translated into Chinese, moves the Chinese. The story of Sakyamuni moves us. And there are such buildings, such pictures, such statues, such music. And so, if art does not move people, we cannot say that this comes from the viewer's or the listener's failure to understand. We can and must conclude only this, that it is either bad art or no art at all. Art differs from the activity of the reason, which requires preparation and a certain order of knowledge, so that you cannot teach trigonometry to a man who does not know geometry. Art works on people regardless of their degree of development and education. The charm of a picture, of sounds, of images, infects every man, whatever level he stands on. The business of art is precisely this, to make understandable and accessible what might have been unintelligible and inaccessible in the form of an argument. Usually, when a man receives a truly artistic impression, it seems to him that he knew it before, but had not been able to say it. And such has always been good, high art. The Iliad, the Odyssey, the story of Jacob, Isaac, and Joseph, the Hebrew prophets, the Psalms, the Gospel parables, the story of Sakyamuni, the hymns of the Vedas, they all carry very high feelings, and for all that they are fully intelligible to us now, educated and uneducated alike, and they were intelligible to the people of their own time, who were less educated than our laborers are. People talk about unintelligibility, but if art is the carrying of feelings that flow from the religious consciousness of men, how can a feeling founded on religion, that is, on man's relation to God, be unintelligible? Such art must be, and always has been, intelligible to all, because every man's relation to God is one and the same, and so the temples, the images in them, and the singing in them, were always intelligible to everyone. The hindrance to understanding the highest and best feelings, as the Gospel says, lies not in any lack of development or learning, but on the contrary in false development and false learning. A good and lofty work of art can indeed be unintelligible, but not to plain, unperverted working people, who understand everything that is highest. A true work of art can be, and often is, unintelligible to overlearned, perverted people, who have no religion. This happens constantly in our society, where the highest religious feelings are simply not understood. I know people, for example, who count themselves the most refined of all, and who say that they do not understand the poetry of love for one's neighbor, or of self-sacrifice, or of chastity, so that good, great, universal religious art can be unintelligible only to a small circle of perverted people, and never the other way round. Art cannot be unintelligible to the great masses just because it is very good, as the artists of our time love to say. It is more likely that art is unintelligible to the great masses because that art is very bad, or is not art at all. So that the argument the cultured crowd loves and swallows so naively, that in order to feel art you must first understand it, which really only means get used to it, is the surest sign that what we are asked to understand in that way is either very bad, exclusive art, or no art at all. They say that works of art do not please the people because the people are incapable of understanding them. But if the aim of a work of art is to infect people with the feeling the artist has lived through, how can there be any talk of not understanding? A man of the people has read a book, looked at a picture, listened to a play or a symphony, and received no feeling from it. He is told that this is because he does not know how to understand. A man is promised a certain spectacle. He goes in and sees nothing. He is told that this is because his sight has not been prepared for it. But the man knows perfectly well that he sees everything. And if he does not see what he was promised, he draws the only conclusion there is, and it is a just one, that the people who undertook to show him the spectacle have not done what they undertook to do. And a man of the people draws exactly the same conclusion, and just as justly, about the works of art of our society, which call up no feeling in him at all. And so to say that a man is not moved by my art because he is still stupid is both very conceited and very insolent. It turns the roles upside down. It blames the healthy head for the sickness of the sick one. Voltaire said that all kinds of writing are good, except the boring kind. With still more right, one can say of art that all kinds are good except the kind one does not understand, or the kind that fails to produce its effect. For what merit can there be in a thing that does not do what it was made for? The main point is this. Once you allow that art can be art, while being unintelligible to people of sound mind, then there is no reason why any circle of perverted people should not compose works that tickle their own perverted feelings and are unintelligible to anyone but themselves, and call these works art. Which is exactly what the so-called decadents are doing now. The course art has taken is like laying on a circle of large diameter other circles of